Okay, we're going to be dealing with midpoint and the length of an interval today. Now the midpoint is, as the name suggests, it's the point which is in the middle of the interval there. And look, there's a couple of different ways to work it out. What you can do is just take the average of the x values there, so 1 plus 4 is equal to 5. Halve, add them together and halve them to get that the x value of the midpoint. Similarly, we can do the same thing with the y values, so 5 plus 2, add them together, halve that answer to get the y value of the midpoint. There is a more formal formula, but again it's the same thing. You're just adding together the x values of the endpoints and halving the answer. Same thing with the y values there. Okay, to work out the length of an interval, we're really using Pythagoras' theorem. So if we want to work out the length of that line there, you notice we can create this right-angled triangle. And we work out the rise and the run like we have before. So in this case, 3 and 2, they've done it for us there. So you can see that the rise, we've gone from a height of 2 up to 5. So the rise was 3. And the run, we've gone from -3 across to -1, so that's where they got the 2 and the 3 from. We then simply put it into Pythagoras' theorem, and our shortcut, so I wouldn't set it out the way they have, I'd simply say the distance is equal to the square root of, and what we're going to do is square each of those numbers together. We're going to add them together because we're trying to find the length of a hypotenuse. Now there is a formal formula we can use for this too. Rightio, we need to find the midpoint of the interval going from 1, 0 to 4, 4. So the midpoint, what we can do is add the two x values together and halve them. So 1 plus 4 divided by 2. Do the same thing with the y values. So we're going to go 0 plus 4 divided by 2. And look, that's going to give us 5 divided by 2, which is 2.5. 4 divided by 2 is 2. Doing the same thing for b. Again, we're going to add the two x values, so -3 and 5, add them together and halve the result. Do the same thing to the y values, so -2 plus 3. -3 plus 5 is 2, 2 divided by 2 is 1. -2 plus 3 is 1, 1 divided by 2 is a half. Okay, so what we're going to be doing here is working out the length of the segment joining these two lines here, or the interval is probably a better word than segment. Now, at a glance, we can actually use these two coordinates to work out the rise and the run. So the rise is the difference between the x values. So the distance from -1 to 4 is going to be equal to 5. The rise is the difference between, and we don't really care if either of these are negative or positive, by the way. It'll make no difference because we're going to square the number. The difference between 2 and -1 is 3, and again we don't care the fact that it's a -3. So the length of that interval is just going to be the square root of 5 squared plus 3 squared. Okay, we can just shove that into our calculator. No need to work out what 5 squared and 3 squared are individually. So we're going to go square root of 5 squared plus 3 squared. That's going to give us, correct to 2 decimal places, 5.83. Look, technically we should write units there, but it doesn't really matter. 5.83 is sufficient. Okay, so we're going to work out a whole heap of midpoints. Okay, so for the first one, look, for very simple ones here, like I'll show working for this first one, but for very simple ones, just writing down the answer is sufficient, because you can see halfway between 0 and 6 is 3, again halfway between 0 and 6 is 3, so just writing down 3, 3 for those simple ones would be fine. But here, let's do it formally. So the first x value plus the second one divided by 2. First y value plus the second y value divided by 2, and 6 divided by 2 is 3, and same again. Sorry, that should be C. Okay, again same thing, we're going to add the 0 and the 2 together, add the 2 and the 8 together. That's 2 divided by 2 is 1, that's 10 divided by 2 is 5. Again, now we're starting to get into the negatives, so negative 2 plus 0 over 2, 0 plus 6 over 2. That's going to be minus 2 divided by 2 is minus 1. 6 divided by 2 is 3. Moving on to G, I'm going to add the 1 and the 2 together. I'm going to add the 3 and the 0 together. 3 over 2. Look, you can either leave it as 3 over 2 or convert it to a decimal. That one is also 3 over 2, also 1.5. Okay, we're going to add the negative 3 and the 4. Add the 7 and the negative 1. Notice there I haven't actually written 7 plus minus 1, I've just written it as 7 minus 1. That'll give us 1 over 2, which is a half, and 6 over 2, which is equal to 3. So we'll go minus 7 plus 1, minus 16 minus 1. That's going to give us minus 6 over 2. That'll give us minus 17 over 2, which is minus 8.5 there. Okay, we're going to work out the length of these intervals here. Again, look, I'll do the first one in a more formal manner, but then we'll just go through and just use the same method I showed you in the examples. So the formal method is we substitute into the equation the distance is equal to the square root of x2 minus x1 all squared plus y2 minus y1 all squared. It's exactly what we were doing before, but let's see how that comes about. So x2 is the x value in the second set of brackets. So go to the second set of brackets, that's the x value there. So this is x2, just happens to be the digit 2. And x1, well, first set of brackets, the x value happens to be 1. That's a coincidence that x2 is 2 and x1 is 1. Similarly, y2 is the y value in the second set of brackets, so 6. y1 is the y value in the first set of brackets. Okay, once it's 2 decimal places, so look, we can just put that straight into our calculator. Let's get rid of that. And I did a bit of a shortcut, hope I haven't stuffed it up, but we get 5.10 to 2 decimal places. Now look, a shorter way to do exactly that same question would simply be to say that, okay, the rise is 1 and the run is 5, so we can say that the length is the square root of 1 squared plus 5 squared. Again, because we're putting a plus sign there, we don't necessarily need to put the biggest number first, and that'll give us the square root of 26, or that 5.10. So you can see that's a lot simpler. So let's use that same method. So here you can see that the difference between the x values is going to be 2. The difference between the y values is going to be 4. Again, put that into our calculator, and we'll get 4.47. Okay, similarly for part G, you can see the difference there is going to be 4 for the x values, and it's going to be 8 for the y values. Okay, so we'll get 8.94. Okay, this time we're told the centre of the circle, and we're told one end of the diameter, and we need to find the other end. Now the quickest way here is to draw yourself a little bit of a sketch. So we've got the point 2, 1, so there's the centre of the circle. We don't know that the radius, and they're not necessarily always going to be the same circle. So 7, 1 would be over here. So if that's the midpoint of the line, you can see that the other end of that line, if we just work out what we need to do to get from there to there, if we just repeat that movement, we'll get to the point we want. So given that these 2 points have got the same y value, what we're doing to the x value is we're subtracting 5. So let's just subtract another 5, and 2 take away 5 is minus 3. With the y value, we stayed at the same height there, so again that y value will stay the same. Okay, if we've got the point 3, 6 there, so you can see to get from there to there, with the x value we're subtracting 1, so we better subtract another 1 there to get down to 1. With the y value we're going from 6 down to 1, so we're subtracting 5, so we better subtract another 5 to get down to our other endpoint, and 1 take away 5 is minus 4. Okay, let's start with another diagram now because it's getting a bit messy. Okay, so there we've got 2, 1. We've now got the point minus 4 minus 0.5. Let's write that down, minus 4 minus a half. Okay, so to get from here to the centre of the circle, again remember that's the midpoint, with the x value we've gone to the right by 6, so we've added 6. So let's add another 6 to get 8. With the y value we've gone from a height of minus a half up to a height of 1, so we've added 1.5, we'll add another 1.5 to get 2.5 there. So as you can see, it's really useful to draw yourself just a little rough diagram on the side. In an exam, always make sure you put that in and write on the information. Don't write it as a separate sheet of paper. Write it on the answer sheet because you can earn marks for that diagram.